Hi, everybody. We are here from the State Line Boys and Girls Club in Beloit, Wisconsin. And thank you for participating in today's social media safety webinar that we have for you guys. One of the reasons that we wanted to do this is just to share some information on tips that parents can use to keep their kids safe while using social media. We know that all teens and youth are going to use social media at some point. And so the point of this is not to say, hey, kids shouldn't be using social media. The point of this is to give you guys tips and ideas for how to keep them safe while doing so. Today I have myself, I'm Emily Peterson, the Director of School Age Programs at the State Line Boys and Girls Club. We have Amy Sorensen on the line, and she is a lead teacher at the State Line Boys and Girls Club. And we also have Mr. Luke Tamburini. He is our teen coordinator here at the club. So we're going to dive right in, and this is a very basic outline of social media, what social media is, and then some of the tips that we can use as parents or other people who work with youth to keep our kids safe. So what is social media? By definition, social media is websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. Social media has been around since the internet started, and obviously at this time it's becoming increasingly more popular, even by the day at this point. Some examples include Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and there's a whole lot more out there as well. So when we look at social media, especially when we are talking about the group of youth using it between the ages of 10 and 18, what are some of the good things that kids can be involved in? Well, it's a great way to connect with friends, family, and especially when friends move away or family, lives elsewhere that you can't just see them on a regular basis. Additionally, social media allows us to capture memories to be viewed later on. I know personally, I have a Facebook account and I love to see memories from 5, 6, or even more years back when they pop up. It's almost like an easy scrapbooking tool to use as we age and get older. It's great when it's used for specific purposes, especially when goal setting takes place beforehand. A lot of businesses use social media for marketing, and it provides us knowledge and resources that we may not get elsewhere. What about some of the things that aren't so good for our youth when they are utilizing social media platforms? One, and probably first and foremost, is addiction. We know as youth development professionals that screen time, or being in front of a computer, a tablet, a phone, from the moment that we're born, actually changes the way that our brain develops in such a way that it shortens the amount of time that we can focus on one thing. Our brains enjoy the overstimulation and immediate information, and over time that can lead to addiction to the point that we're looking at our phones every 5 minutes, and we almost need it. It's like any other addiction. It's like our brain wants the fix, right? So even as adults, research has shown that adults check their phone once every 6 minutes. Probably not because we absolutely have to. It's because our brain is so addicted to it or used to doing that and getting that immediate information and wanting that information that it becomes habit. A couple other things: child predation and human trafficking. It has been shown many times that human trafficking occurs most frequently where the predator will contact or get in touch with an individual who they hope to then traffic in the long run through a social media platform. Poor sense of self. I personally call it the screen effect, where we see tons of people out there and they put their best lives forward on social media. And for our teens especially, who are very self-aware and very interested in how others view them, it almost gives them the perception that several of their friends or family members are living a very great life and they have maybe no problems, or maybe, you know, not struggling with some of the things that all youth struggle with, because we put out only our best. So for a lot of teens in that vulnerable category, when we're so aware of ourselves and extremely interested in how others view us, it can create a poor sense of self over time. Privacy concerns, time consumption, you know, you'll see throughout this presentation that there's certain platforms that people spend an average of 50 or more minutes per day on. And when you talk about that over a course of a year, that's quite a long time. And then sleep disturbance. So either we can't put the phone down, so we're not going to bed at a good time, or we are keeping our notifications on and it's even waking us up in the middle of the night. And that can affect schoolwork and other things that our youth are also involved in. So as a general suggestions for safe social media use, before we get into the different platforms that we are going to present to you today, here's a list of different suggestions that you can use as parents or other adults that work with youth to help them have safe social media use. The first one is discussing the use of social media with your child before they participate. Talk about using caution when posting. Is it something that you're going to regret later? Is it safe? Is posting this going to leave you open for people contacting you for reasons that you don't want them contacting you for? Will it ruin a friendship? Talk about those things with your teens, because we forget that sometimes that they don't think like we do. And they sometimes don't have the ability to think through an action long term, and they do it in the immediacy and then later on regret that.
I say
time
something?
limit? Go ahead.
I was say on the usage, one thing we have to always remind our teens is that no matter what you put out there, it's out there. It stays out there. And like you said, they don't have the knowledge like we do, but we always have to make sure they know that it's always out there. Even if the site deletes it or whatever social media is being used deletes it, it's still out there.
Absolutely, that's a good point, especially when we talk about Snapchat and different sites that people can save that and continue reposting it. And we do see that all the time, especially in politics right now. So, you know, furthermore, set time limits, stick to the time limits. There's a lot of apps out there for parents, especially, that help them to monitor their child's social media use. There's a link right here in this presentation that you're welcome to utilize to see some of the apps that are available. Download one on your phone, and it's an easy way for you to check in on your kids and ensure that they're doing positive things and using it in a positive way. Make sure that the accounts that you have on social media have the most restrictive settings. Obviously, that helps to avoid privacy issues, unwanted messages, and other things. And even as adults, we should try to keep our accounts as restricted as possible, dependent on the way that we're utilizing that social media. Adhere to age recommendations. We titled this for youth ages 10 to 18. Most youth under age 13 are using social media. At the same time, most platforms recommend that the child or individual utilizing their app be age 13 or over. Protect passwords, can maintain an open dialogue with your child about social media, and keep an eye on their mental health. And you will see that we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue on. So Snapchat. We're going to go through 6 social media apps at this time and just share brief information about each, and then some suggestions specific to those particular apps to help keep your teens safe. So here's some information about Snapchat. The biggest thing to know is that Snapchat is essentially what AOL Instant Messenger was in the early 2000s. And you are able to talk individually, essentially, with friends. And as soon as those messages are opened, those messages are then deleted by the app. So again, an individual one-on-one format for communicating with each other. So Snapchat by the numbers. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but there's a couple of interest here. Snapchat is probably the single social media platform that has the most teenagers using it. So 90% of users on Snapchat are between 13 and 24, and that does not include anybody under the age of 13 because they do not count those in the numbers here. Also, 70% of the users are female. And again, of note, users open the app an average of 30 times per day, and an average user spends 50 minutes per day on the app. So if you're talking about Snapchat, you want to try to ensure as best as possible that your kids are not using it so much that it's taking up their homework time, and that they're using it for several hours a day. So you can look at the chart on the left-hand side here as well. And of total monthly users, Snapchat is actually one of the lowest. But of those users, 90% of them are young, between the age of 13 and 24. So what are some good things about Snapchat? Well, teens can stay in contact with each other. That's important to them. They want to have ways to communicate with their friends that's not only face-to-face. They can share pictures and videos with each other. And to some extent, the fact that Snapchat deletes the pictures and videos after they're viewed by the person is somewhat of a positive, because that allows for less people to potentially view that, and hopefully if it's something that the teen would later regret, that would not be accessible to other people. What about some of the bad? Well, we know that there's a lot of time that people are spending on this, and it can lead to depression and suicide, especially amongst our youth. They are so overly concerned about what other people think of them. If they put something out there and have negative feedback on it, that can have a negative effect on their mental health. Snapchat is popular among child predators. Our research indicates that that is true. Part of that is because of the fact that the messages are deleted right away. People who are seeking to do harm know that, and they hope that the images or messages that they're sending aren't easily shareable. So here are just some information about, some of the things that Snapchat has caused. It is very simple to reach out to people via Snapchat. Human trafficking can occur through Snapchat. What happens is the individual will contact a person that they're eyeing, so to speak, and they will become friends with them and whatnot, and it goes from there. And sometimes parents can't see these messages because they disappear. So how do you protect your youth when they are using Snapchat? Well, keep an eye on what your kids are doing and who they're talking to. My own daughter uses Snapchat to communicate with her friends, and I check her account weekly, and I look at the friends that she has on her account. If there's somebody that I'm not sure who it is, I ask her immediately, and if she doesn't give me a good answer, I delete that person. Not that they can't necessarily go back and reinstate that person later, but it does deter them over time. Always check and see what those friends have on Snapchat, and hopefully you know those friends to an extent as well. Luke or Amy, do you have anything else that you'd like to share in related to Snapchat?
The one that you were talking about on the slide before this one, the gentleman that was reaching out to the 13-year-old girls, he was reaching out to multiple girls at that school that she was going to. And it was all over vape pods and what they'll do to get them and what they won't do. And so it's very serious with that. Always have to keep up on that and who they're talking to.
Absolutely, because they're taking that vulnerable population and knowing what they want and may not have access to, and maybe providing them access to some of those things and leading in that way.
It should also be noted that even though these disappear, like after you open them and read them, people can screenshot those really
Yep.
quickly and continue to pass them around. So if you're sending inappropriate information or photos or personal information, or you say something you don't really want other people to hear, or to know about you, it's going to take a split second for that person to screenshot it and continue, passing your info around. So
those are all good points to bring up, and thank you both for sharing that. So at this point, we're going to move on to Instagram. Instagram is a new platform over the past 5 years, I believe, and it's primarily for use of sharing photos. Very photo forward format, very appealing to the younger crowd. And the platform is easy for following celebrities as well and seeing photos of them. Instagram is owned by Facebook, so it is a part to an extent of Facebook, but it is extremely appealing to that younger crowd, whereas Facebook is a little bit more appealing to our older individuals. Instagram has 1 billion monthly users and 500 million daily users. 56% are female. 37% of adults and 72% of teens use Instagram. So notice that probably less teens are using Instagram than Snapchat, and there's it doesn't quite reach 50% of adults either. And then your average age is between the age of 18 and 34. This one, people are spending a little bit less time on every day. So this one user spent an average of 28 minutes per day. The chart here shows the average minutes spent on particular apps per day, and you'll see that Instagram is actually one of the lowest averages of time, and TikTok, Snapchat, and Facebook are a little bit higher. So what are some good things about Instagram? Well, 35% of teens say that Instagram is their preferred platform. So when when youth want to connect to each other, they're going to flock to Instagram because their friends are using it as well. It's very easy to use. It's simple. Artists use Instagram a lot to show off their work. And of course, as with any social media, it's a great way to connect with friends. Some of the bad things about Instagram that we came across in doing the research that we did, there's a lot of mature content on Instagram, and it can be fairly hard to filter it out. Additionally, when you're posting up pictures, comments from public, especially if you have people that are following you whom you don't know and are, sitting behind a screen and don't really care what they say, comments can be brutal. And we know that our younger people, especially women, and young women, are very self-conscious about their image. There's a lot of pressure for that perfect profile or perfect pictures. We don't want our teens to end up with a negative body image over this. Another thing of note with Instagram is a lot of kids especially have what they call a Rinsta and a Finsta. And this was actually something that I learned while putting this together because I'm not an Instagram user myself. But Rinstas, if you hear your kids using that terminology, that is what they consider a real Instagram page. So that would be for a small group of friends that they can be their real selves, so they say. And then Finsta is a fake Instagram page, and that's where they kind of put their best self out there to the world and maybe not just a close circle of friends. So if you hear your kids talking about Rinstas and Finstas, that's what they're talking about. The fake Instagram pages are probably the most concerning, not because it's necessarily bad, but that's where they're going to have followers and such that they may not know. How can you protect your youth in Instagram? Well, make your account private and block the location sharing. Location sharing is something a lot of apps use, and that will tell an individual where that person is, where they're using that app. Obviously, if you have somebody contacting your child that doesn't know them or potentially wants to do harm, and of course we hope that doesn't happen, but we know reality is that it does sometimes, you certainly don't want them to know where you're located. Discuss representation of self. Again, we talked about this before. Don't post something that you might regret. There is also a way to block certain comments. So in the account, you can block inappropriate or disrespectful comments. This will help A, with the mental health for our youth, and B, to keep inappropriate comments off of the page. Think about setting it up so that you cannot be tagged in a photo without permission. So you don't want somebody to have taken a embarrassing potentially photo of you and then post it on Instagram, or even worse, an inappropriate photo or something else. So if you make it so that you cannot be tagged without permission, you won't have anything that you might later regret up on the page. Do spot checks. Talk with your teens about what they're doing, who they're talking to, and how they feel about their use of their social media page. Anything else, Luke and Amy, on Instagram, the photo sharing app?
Not from me. I don't use it very often.
Well, it's funny. I was looking through my phone while we're talking about all these different apps. I have Instagram on my phone. I think I've used it maybe twice because one of my adult children told me to sign up for it. I don't use it. So it's an app. It's still on my phone. So is Snapchat, which I don't use that one either. And TikTok's on my phone too. Like, I have all these apps that everybody's like, oh, you should download this app. I don't use them. It's kind of funny.
But our teens are. So speaking of TikTok, this is actually probably one of the ones that a lot of parents are most interested in right now, because it kind of hit the market and became extremely popular extremely quickly. And we hear our kids talking about TikTok all the time. So what is TikTok? Well, TikTok is used to create short dance, lip sync, and other talent videos. Most of the time you're going to see clips that are 15 seconds or less. Some are longer than that. And it was launched in 2017. It merged with Musical.ly, if you guys remember when that was popular, in 2018. So that's where TikTok really got its start, was with Musical.ly. But the short of it is that users can utilize the app to make short videos with music that they might not be able to get elsewhere. So what does the numbers look like for TikTok? Well, there's 800 million monthly users, and 41% of those users are between the age of 16 and 24. So again, we're looking at that younger population. 56% of the users on TikTok are male. So this is the first social media platform that we've covered thus far that has 56%, or I should say a larger percentage of male users than female users. And again, TikTok is one of those that kids are spending, and not just kids, but everybody is spending a lot of time on per day. So an average of 52 minutes per day is spent on this app. Keep in mind, those are averages. So there are a lot of adults who have TikTok maybe downloaded on their phone, like Amy just indicated. They may not be using it. If they're not using it, that's going to bring the average down, right? In theory, our youth are using it more. So the average time that our youngest people between that age of 16 and 24 are using it is actually probably higher. What's the good in TikTok? Well, you can express yourself. And there's a lot of different ways and videos that you can make on this app. And kids are even utilizing it for school projects and doing some really cool things with it. There's a link here. You're welcome to look at that. Access to professional audio to create content that they wouldn't otherwise be able to create on their own. So there's several, hit songs that are available on this app that you can play in the background while making your video. And that's why you see, the TikTok dances, that whole craze is coming up. Most of the time you would not be able to do those things without an app like this. Most videos are 15 seconds or less. There's a For You page that allows the app to tailor experiences to users by filtering out content they wouldn't typically watch. Most other social media platforms only, show you everything from your friends. This is a little bit different. What are some of the negative things? Well, by default, all profiles are public on TikTok. There's been a lot of inappropriate language and sexually suggestive content that has come through on TikTok, and it's really hard to filter it out. It has gotten better over time, but it is still a little bit difficult to filter that out. And one of the biggest things about TikTok is the desire for fame. And a lot of our youth are experiencing this. My own daughter, wants to be TikTok famous, whatever that is in her mind. Well, this can unfortunately lead to kids wanting public accounts so that anybody can see their content, and then them creating videos that may be inappropriate or even dangerous in order to get the views. TikTok challenges, several of those are dangerous. If you guys remember the Tide Pod, the challenge of eating Tide Pods and different things like that. I don't think that's one of the TikTok challenges, but that's an example of some of the things that are going on out there that could be super dangerous to kids. And then of course, TikTok, that addiction piece. I mean, these are short videos over and over. You can spend a whole lot of time watching videos without thinking about it. And all of a sudden it's been 2 hours, and you should have gone to bed 2 hours prior to getting on TikTok. How to protect your kids on TikTok. Age 13 up. Age 13 and up is a big one. Make that account private as soon as you get on. Filter comments out. There is a way to do that now, and they've also created a family safety mode. I believe they call it family pairing now. And you can control the use of the account and filter certain content, and even limit screen time. So really consider putting a limit on the screen time for your kids, right on their phone or right on their app. Report inappropriate content to TikTok, and educate your kids about the dangers of engaging in challenges or trying to become TikTok famous, or whatever, phrase that they're using. Anything else on TikTok?
This is one that I noticed that a lot of teens in the program use. And as much as we try to deter it, they use it. I know my daughter uses it. And at one point, she had mentioned that she's looked at over 1 million videos on there. And as young as she is, I'm not a fan of that. But she's always trying to do dances when she gets together with her friends. They're always trying to do dances as well, and they're always trying to be that TikTok famous.
Absolutely. And they have this kind of grandeur idea that everybody's going to love watching their videos. and that's not necessarily the case.
I feel like I'm learning some new stuff because my older kids are already in their 20s and past this, and being that my youngest one is 9, hasn't quite reached this yet. So I'm glad we're doing this, because I don't know these apps, and he's going to probably start getting interested in those pretty soon. And so I feel like now I'm going to have the heads up. So
Absolutely. And so the last 3 that we're going to talk about, hopefully we can go through a little bit quicker, primarily because they're ones that we're probably more familiar with as adults. So the first one is Facebook. And we all pretty much know, most of us know what Facebook is. And it's been around for quite some time. And it's actually more popular with adults than it is with the younger population at this point. By the numbers, Facebook has 2.6 billion active monthly users worldwide. 51% of them are teens, and of teens, 51% of teens use Facebook, and 80% of adults use or have used Facebook as well. So you can see that Facebook is more geared for adults and more popular with the older crowd. The interesting note about Facebook is that about 40% of people are friends with more people on Facebook that they have never met in their life versus friends that they've actually met. And that could be of interest for us as parents with our youth, because we want to avoid that as much as possible. Some of the good things, well, communication. Again, we've talked about that a lot. They want to stay in contact. This is a great way to do it. There's a good ways on Facebook, especially, to use it to promote different things that they're interested in. Academic, there's good academic uses. There's a lot of really good videos that are posted and links that can take kids to different learning opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. What about some of the negative things on Facebook? Well, okay, addiction. We're talking about this a lot. Set those time limits. Talk to your kids. Don't let them use social media too much before it just gets out of control and they're not doing anything else with their lives, so to speak, right? Cyberbullying, and that's actually one we haven't touched base too much on yet, but it's definitely something to consider. Disruptive to sleep, anxiety, depression, and mental health. Keep an eye on your kids' mental health. Even without social media, that's important. But social media with some of the grandeur, ideas, people putting only the positive things on, it makes teens conscious about, whether or not they actually have a good life, so to speak. They start to question themselves, and it's tough on them because they're so over involved with that. Oh boy, I'm not sure why this is so small, but I apologize about that. But how can we protect our youth using Facebook? Follow the age guidelines. Protect your passwords so that you can't get hacked into. Be careful about what your youth post. Again, we talk about that regret factor. Facebook, it's not going to go away, and somebody can get a screenshot of it as quickly as you think. And there's been a lot of stories out from especially like middle school age kids where something will happen and it gets posted on Facebook and it's embarrassing, and they take the post down, but somebody else now already has it and they repost it, and it's just this constant cyclical cycle of reposting that this poor child or whomever it is can't get rid of it. Use the Facebook's privacy and security features. You can do login alerts, set your privacy so that only friends can see your profile information. There's even a way that you can turn off the friend request feature so that other people outside of your friends cannot request to be friends with you. You have to make that request. And that's probably one of the key ways to keep kids safe on Facebook, is not allowing others to request their friends. Because let's face it, if I'm 17 years old and I get a friend request, I'm probably going to accept it, whether I know the person or not, just because the more friends I have, the cooler I look. Well, that person might have ill intent, and we can avoid that by turning off that friend request feature. Anything else on Facebook?
You covered quite a bit on that. Another thing they have on there that they've added recently is the share button, where you can turn off the share on there, and you can make it to where it's only on your account. Because with it on there, if someone shares it, 100 people can share it really quickly.
Another thing with Facebook is always continue to monitor your privacy settings.
Yes.
Because I personally have had issues with that, where they've done an update and then all of a sudden I'm getting friend requests from people I have no clue who they are, but yet I had friend requests turned off, but now all of a sudden it's not. And privacy settings where only friends and family can see my posts, and now all of a sudden like everybody can see it's set to public. So when they do those updates, sometimes it like kicks off your settings and you have to go back in and reset those. So parents should be aware of that maybe they need to, remind their teens or go and check that for themselves to make sure those settings are still, active.
Yes, thank you both for mentioning those things, especially the share feature not, being able to be turned off. That's awesome. I mean, that would be great for teens. So the next one here is Twitter, and we're going to spend very little time on Twitter because most teens aren't using it. and you can see that 63% of Twitter users are between the age of 35 and 65 years old. So this is generally for the older population. In saying that, though, there's some good things that come out of Twitter. There's some negative things. Again, we're talking about the addiction, the cyberbullying, flooded with bad news, fake accounts. So how do you protect your kids if they are using Twitter? Again, can't reiterate it enough. Try as much as possible to follow those age guidelines. Protect your passwords and be careful about what's being posted. It's hard to take things back later. Don't post personal information like schools or where you play sports. Again, if you have somebody who is eyeing your social media accounts, hoping to do ill intent, and unfortunately there's more of it than we want to admit that there probably is. If you're posting what school you go to, where you live, where your next sports game is, they would have access to that information. And the less they have to know where you're at, the better. That leads right into turning off the location settings and not allowing people to see where you're posting from. And obviously keeping up and monitoring the activity. Monitoring is one of the biggest things. Use an app or talk to them specifically. In my house, my daughter's phone, I can look at any time. And we have that agreement, make these agreements hopefully ahead of time before they even start using social media. The last one that we wanted to share very briefly is Fortnite. And Fortnite is not probably something that you would think of as a social media app right off the bat, but it has become, especially for the youngest kids, that even 10 and under, a social media site, so to speak, for them because they can communicate while playing the game. So Fortnite is actually a video game, and it's a battle royale type game, and the objective is to kill or get killed. The last man standing wins. With Fortnite, you have the ability to play on a team, and when you're playing, you can communicate with those players back and forth. Sometimes kids will play with their friends. If they're not playing with their friends that they know, they're going to get paired up with somebody that some random other user that they do not know, that they may have the ability to speak to. So lots of players on Fortnite. And again, one of the things to consider here is that 65% of adults play video games. Now, that doesn't mean that 65% of them are playing Fortnite particularly, but there are a lot of adults who play video games and then who would have access to maybe communicate with your child through that game. Again, most of them are not going to have ill intentions, but some will, and this is about safety. So what are some good things about Fortnite? Well, it's a team game, so you learn teamwork and you have to be strategic about some of the things you're doing. So obviously you have to think your way through it, so it's not just sitting and watching mindless videos. What are some of the bad things? Cyberbullying, that's huge, huge. I mean, these kids oftentimes get paired up to play together and they don't know each other. And so some of the comments that they make over their headsets or whatever it is that they're using to speak can be super inappropriate because they don't know you, they can't see you, there really isn't any consequence for them using inappropriate language or bullying, so to speak, the person on the other end. Violence towards family and friends, unhealthy sleeping patterns, huge with this one as well. You can get sucked into this, play for hours and hours, all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. and you have school that you need to get up for. Anger issues, and again, addiction. Addiction can also lead to mental health situations that are not what we want for our kids. There's been a lot of, weird news about Fortnite as well, including, there was a 9-year-old girl not too long ago who actually had to be admitted for addiction to this game. She would sit in front of this game for hours on end to the point that she wouldn't even get up from the game to use the restroom, and she would just wet herself right on the couch or wherever she was sitting. So that addiction factor is real with this, and our own teen coordinator's son actually struggled with playing this game and often broke things and had anger that resulted from playing the game. So how do you protect your kids if they are choosing to play Fortnite? Set time limits. Monitor who they're playing with. If they're not playing with friends, maybe make it so that they can only play solo if they're not playing with people they know. Set a budget limit or don't allow youth to make purchases for the game. So that's, another thought here. Once they get spending on some of these games and some of the things that aren't even necessary for play, you don't want to allow that to get out of control. So again, Fortnite is one that's not probably one that you'd expect us to talk about, but it is, in our minds, important to bring up. So those are the 6, apps that we were going to share with you all today. And if you guys have questions or want to offer comments, if you want information on other sites, go ahead and add it into the comment section, and we will be, happy to maybe even put out another video at some point. Again, this is very basic information, but we do hope that it can help some parents and youth to navigate social media in a safe and positive way. So again, we appreciate everybody for participating in this, and we're open for comments and suggestions as well. Again, we'll be happy to do this more moving forward, even as more apps come out. Anything else from Ms. Amy or Mr. Luke before we end this?
No.
All right. Good luck to all of you out there navigating this, and let's just keep doing the best that we can for kids and do whatever it takes.
Bye.